Good evening. How's everyone tonight? Good. I'd like to thank Scott and Beth and New York 912 for giving me the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My wife tells me that I tend to run on, so I'm going to stick to my notes to try to keep it brief. But I do want to give you a background of who I am, what I'm about, so you have a complete picture. My name is Ted Waga, and I am running for the United States Congress against Congressman Platts in the Republican primary. Once I talk about who I am, I'm going to talk about why I'm running. This wasn't a decision that I made just yesterday. This has been in my heart for some time. And then I want to talk about my platform. What I first want to tell you is what I'm not. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not a career politician. I do not intend to be a career politician. My goal is to be a citizen legislator. I don't want to go to Washington and make my life there. I want to go to Washington and make changes there. I was born and raised in Baltimore County, Maryland, just south of York County, to a blue-collar family. And being in a blue-collar family, we didn't have a whole lot of money. You know, my parents struggled at times. And my dad taught me a couple key lessons when I was young. He taught me, one, if you want something, you have to work for it. There are no free lunches. Nobody's going to give you anything. A lot of people lose that thought today. A lot of people think they're owed something. But I was taught at an early age a strong work ethic. And that stuck with me throughout my lifetime. Even before I was old enough to get a real job, in the summer I would go around and cut grass. In the winter, I would shovel snow. I'd go down to the local Mars supermarket and carry bags. That's a Baltimore chain. I don't know if you guys have heard of Mars, but until they chased me off. And then I would also deliver newspapers. And cutting the grass was not an easy chore because I wasn't allowed to use a gas mower. My father wouldn't let me. I had to use one of those old metal reel mowers. Anybody remember those things? Yeah, they're not very fun. And imagine just pulling that around the whole community. But, you know, if I wanted something, I knew I had to work for it. I wasn't going to be given anything. Once I was old enough to have a job, I got a job. And I had a job all through high school. I'd go to school during the day, and in the evening, I'd work at my job. As an adult, I've always had a job. Everything I have, I've worked for. I haven't been given anything, and I don't expect to be given anything. I'm not afraid to roll up my sleeves and put in the time. And this is the type of work ethic that I hope to take to Washington with me when I serve you. I'm not afraid to put in the time. I'm not going to be a part-time legislator. I'm going to work full-time for you as a citizen legislator. Shortly after graduating high school, I met my wife, Sherry. My ultimate goal was to go to college. That kind of changed. I met her one evening, and we spent, I don't know, hours sitting and just talking. And I knew that night I was going to marry that girl. And I didn't let her get away. Together, we have two beautiful daughters. My wife, Sherry's right here in the front. My daughters, Kaylee and Taylor, are right there. And as a young couple, we struggled at times. It was tough. But again, that strong work ethic that my father taught me, I would work as many jobs as I had to make ends meet. And I was lucky enough that at about the age of 22, I got a job working for Merritt Oil Company down in Baltimore as a station manager. They had a station that wasn't doing very well. And I got the job, and the guy said, you got to turn this place around. We're losing money. It's your job to fix it. And that was all he told me. So I went in, and I looked at the stock, I looked at everything, and I looked at where we were losing money, where that station was losing money, made the recommendations. We turned that station around, and here I am, a 22-year-old guy. I'm supervising people 2.5 times my age. But as a leader, I was able to lead those folks and turn that station around. As a result of that, that regional manager put me in charge of another station. So now I'm managing 2 stations as a 20-something kid, supervising people 2 times my age because of that strong work ethic that my father instilled in me. I put in more hours than I was supposed to, and I didn't get paid for those hours. But I knew that that's what I had to do. And so things were starting to look pretty good. I was making decent money. I was successful in that position when the opportunity came for me to become a Baltimore County police officer. Now, this is something that I had wanted to be ever since I was a child, was to be a Baltimore County police, was to be a police officer. And there's actually a story behind that. It's kind of funny and not funny. It was summer between 5th and 6th grade. My brother and I, along with a friend of ours, went to the store to get some candy or something of that nature. And on the way home, I wasn't really paying attention to them, and they had already crossed the street. I, trying to catch up with them, ran between 2 cars. How many can guess what happened next? I got plowed. I got hit hard. The car was probably going about 30, 35 miles per hour. And back then, the cars weren't plastic with styrofoam bumpers. It was a metal car with a metal bumper. And My brother made fun of me after the fact because he said I flew so high in the air, I said I looked like Superman. Luckily, I was out cold. I didn't feel anything. All I remember was getting up. My knee hurt a little bit. I had some bumps, some scrapes, but I was okay. I was going to leave. I was ready to go home. I started to walk away, and they stopped me. They said, no, we already called 911. You got to go to the hospital. And so the medics came, and I told them, I'm fine. I don't want to go to the hospital. And the police officer had gone and got my mom and brought her down, and the medics told her, you know, he looks fine. He can go home if he wants to. So the officer took us home, and when you're a police officer, you can't get out the back doors from the inside. They got to let you out from the outside. And the officer got out, let my wife out, or let my mother out, and then went around, and he let me out. And I got out, started to walk to the house. And he stopped me, and he turned me around, and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he looked at me. And he says, you know what, kid, you're lucky. He says, somebody must have something very special planned for you. And to him, that probably was nothing, because he got up, got in his car, and left. But to me, that meant something. And that made me feel really good. He helped me to feel good about myself. And that's when I made the decision that I wanted to be like him. I wanted to be a police officer, and I wanted to help people. And so when that opportunity presented itself, even though I was going to take that was about a $5,000 pay cut at the time, I knew that that's what I had to do. And so I took the job as a police officer. And we struggled a little bit again. But when I got through the academy and I got through my field training, I was able to work secondary jobs. And I would work 2, sometimes 3 secondary security jobs to make ends meet. Again, that work ethic that my father taught me. And I took that into my regular job as an officer. I would work overtime if they asked for it. I would do any details that they asked for. Nobody likes to do details, but I didn't mind. I wanted to do everything I could to help the department and help people. And very shortly, within a couple of years, I became an informal leader on our squad. I had folks who were senior to me coming to me, asking me how to handle calls, asking me how to write reports, asking me what they should do in certain situations. I'm the junior guy, and they're coming to me. My supervisors took note of this as well, and they constantly encouraged me, you need to get promoted. You got to move up the ranks. And that was something that was in my heart. And so I did, and I was successful in becoming a corporal and a sergeant. And throughout my career, I've earned the respect of my supervisors and my peers and my subordinates. But more importantly, I've had an opportunity to help many people over the years. I have one group of elderly folks. They were on the way home to D.C. from Atlantic City. They had one car that they were in. The car broke down. They had no family. They had no friends. Nobody to come get them. And here they are stuck in Baltimore. So I gave them a drive home, dropped them off each at their front door. To me, that's my job. No problem. But to them, that meant something. And every one of them wrote me a letter thanking me for how I had helped them and what I had done for them. And that, to me, is more rewarding than making a lockup. 4 years ago, I took command of the Baltimore County Auxiliary Police Team. I'm very proud of this group of people. These are volunteers who put their lives in harm's way every day to do just like I want to do, help people, help their community. At the time I took over, there were 29 auxiliary officers, and the team had declined in number year after year after year. However, I had a vision for that team. And the Bible says that if you don't have a vision, the people will perish. And so I shared that vision with the leaders of the group. And together, through strong leadership, through teamwork, through dedication, perseverance, this team has grown every year since. And we've grown to over 70 members at this point, and we're still growing. So I'm very proud and very happy and very excited about my career as a police officer. And the decision that I've made to run for Congress was not an easy one. In addition to being a police officer, I currently serve as the president of the Homeowners Association where we live. This is not a paid position. This is a voluntary position. It has consumed a great deal of my time, personal money, time away from the family, but it's something that I felt I had to do. I was elected to the position in September of 2010. And again, I ran there because I saw what was going on in our community. I saw how the community itself was going down. It was depreciating. Our pavilion was falling apart. Our trail was falling apart. Things needed to be fixed, and nothing seemed to be getting done. We weren't getting any kind of feedback from the agent who was running our association at the time. And so I ran, and I was elected. And once I was elected and I started to ask questions, I started to look at things, I saw that things just weren't right. Something was wrong. And I could have done what past board members have done and simply been a member in name only. and let the managing agent continue to run the community into the ground. But I couldn't do that. So I made a tough decision. I went to the other board members and I made a motion to stop using that managing agent and to be a self-run association. To be an association where we, the people, would run our community, not some outside agency. Now, I knew this would mean a lot more work for us. I mean, it's very easy to sit back and let somebody else do the work for you and have your name up there. I'm the president of the executive board. It would have been very easy to do that, but I couldn't. I knew it was going to be hard work, but I also had nothing to do. At the time, there were 3 members, and when I made the motion, one of the other members seconded it, so we had to vote. The 2 of us voted for it. The 3rd member voted against it, immediately tendered their resignation. So now there's 2 of us. Together, we decided we need to increase the board. We did that. We had elections in November of 2010, elected 3 new members to the board. We now have 5 members on the board. Once I had gotten all the information and everything from the managing agent, we found out pretty quickly we were $5,000 in debt. We were in trouble. We had no money to make repairs, to make improvements. If something happened to somebody in the community, we didn't have a reserve fund. We were in trouble. But again, through strong leadership and teamwork, this group of 5 have not only paid off that debt, we've not only made the improvements that I was talking about, but we look to have over $11,000 surplus at the end of this year, in only 1 year. Now, I know that running an association of 200 homes is not the same scale as governing the federal government, but the principles are the same. And one final thing you should know about me is that I am an unapologetic Christian. My wife and I, with our 2 daughters, we attend Windsor Assembly of God in Windsor. My wife teaches children's church and girls ministry, and I teach Royal Rangers. Now, I say that not to say I'm a perfect person. None of us are. But I am guided by my Christian principles and Christian values. Being a Christian and American, I'm also unwaveringly pro-life. The Declaration of Independence says that all men are created, and I want to focus on that word created for a second. All men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life with a capital L, liberty with a capital L, and the pursuit of happiness with a capital H. That baby that is created in that womb has an unalienable right to life. And it's our duty, our responsibility, to secure that right for that child. And that's one of the things that I will seek to do if I am elected to go to Washington for you. Our country was founded on Christian morals and values. George Washington, our first president, said, "While we are zealously performing the duties of good Christians and soldiers, we certainly ought not be inattentive to higher duties of religion. To the distinguished character of patriot, it should be our highest glory to add the more distinguished character of Christian." Our first president, our founding father, said, hey, it's good to be a patriot. It's better to be a Christian patriot. Our country is where it is because of what our founding fathers did, because of their beliefs, the morals and values. John Adams, our second president and signer of the Declaration of Independence, in a letter to Thomas Jefferson, said the general principles on which the fathers achieved independence were the general principles of Christianity. Now, I know that our president at one time said America is no longer a Christian nation. I beg to differ. We are a Christian nation. However, over the years, we've moved further and further away from those Christian morals and values and principles that guided our founding fathers. And I think it's about time that we start instilling some morality and value-based decision-making back into Washington. Now, I mentioned earlier that I didn't just make this decision the other day. This is something that's been in my heart for 5 years to run for Congress. But I resisted it. Just as Mr. Wagner said, hope. I had hope that Washington would change. Things would turn around. Washington hasn't changed. Things haven't turned around. In fact, it's only gotten worse. And unless something is done, it'll continue to get worse. There's a saying that says we inherit our nation from our fathers. I believe we borrow it from our children. And when I give my nation back to these 2 girls, what am I giving them? when our children grow up and our grandchildren grow up, what are we giving them? Our elected officials have borrowed and spent our nation to the point of insolvency. We are bankrupt. As a nation, we are bankrupt. And if drastic changes aren't made, this nation will crumble under the weight of its debt. Make no mistake, it will crumble. We must draw a line in the sand and hold that line. We cannot compromise any further. Our elected officials have restricted our freedoms as individuals and as business owners through crippling legislation and regulation. It was mentioned a number of regulations that are passed per day, and I did a little study on this, and what I came up with was that over a 3-year period between 2008 and 2010, there were over 2,400 new regulations that were enacted. And they were enacted by unelected bureaucrats, people that we didn't elect into office. They were placed there. And yet they affect our lives every day through this regulation. And Congress has the power, through the Congressional Review Act, to stop any and all regulation before it's implemented. However, the last time that I was able to find that they did this was 2001 or 2002. That, my friends, is a dereliction of duty. Every single piece of regulation that comes down the pipe from these unelected bureaucrats should be carefully scrutinized by our elected officials, because these things affect us. Our elected officials have compromised our national security and increased our vulnerability by failing to secure our border. I thought for sure after 9/11 that would be taken care of, and yet here we are a decade later. We have a president who refuses to uphold the law when it comes to the Defense of Marriage Act. That is the law. And yet he refuses to uphold the law. And as a police officer, I believe in the rule of law. As the president, he doesn't care. We have a president, and Mr. Wagner mentioned this, who's sidestepping the political process and Congress, acting unilaterally through the use of executive orders. Several over the past week and a half. He's become a dictator. And Congress has not done anything to keep him in check. We have an attorney general who's implicated in the illegal access and transfer of assault rifles over the U.S.-Mexican border that resulted in the death of a U.S. Border Patrol agent. An agent doing his job, protecting this country, was killed because of the actions of our government. And we have a Congress that is seemingly doing nothing about these things. Sure, they have meetings, and they have hearings, but nobody seems to be held accountable for anything. It's simply business as usual. The incident I just mentioned, the gun running incident, they've been investigating that for 10 months. 10 months. If you're a detective, I mean, you're investigating a case, if it's not a homicide, and you're on it for 10 months, your boss is getting on your back saying, hey, when are you going to clear this thing? Let's do something with it. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm getting sick and tired of business as usual in Washington, D.C. This system in Washington, the way they do business, it's broke. It doesn't work. And you didn't break it. I didn't break it. Our elected officials in Washington broke it. And yet they expect us to trust them and send them back year after year to fix what they broke. They can't seem to lay aside their petty differences long enough to work together, identify the problem, and fix the problem. The bottom line is Congress must change the way they're doing business, because the way they're doing business right now isn't working. And if we're going to see positive changes, and we're going to change the way they do business, we have to change the mindset in Washington. We have to change the way that they're thinking. And the only way we can change the mindset in Washington is to change the people who are in Washington. We have to replace these lawyers and career politicians with citizen legislators, people who will go to Washington and do what's needed for the American people, not for the Republican Party, not for the Democratic Party, not for lobbyists, not for special interest groups, but for we, the people. So that's why I'm running for Congress, because we got to change Congress. We got to change Washington. So what do I propose? The 3 R's: reduce, repeal, and restore. It was mentioned how large our government is. Our government is a monstrosity that has grown out of control. We must reduce the size and the scope of our government. I mean, I don't know about you, but it seems like the federal government has their hands in every part of our lives, and I'm sure, Mr. Wagner's presentation up here is a perfect example of that. Every aspect of his business is regulated by the government. Ronald Reagan once said years ago, "Do we believe in our capacity for self-government, or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves?" I have faith in our capacity as Americans to govern our own lives. We don't need these few intellectual elite, and I don't know how intellectual they are nowadays, to govern our lives for us. We can reduce the size of government by eliminating unnecessary departments, such as the Department of Education, the Department of Energy, EPA, and quite a few others. We can reduce the size of government by eliminating duplicative programs. I just heard the other day, the United States government spends $100 billion a year in duplicative programs. That's wasteful spending. If you do that in a business, you're going under. If your boss finds out that you're wasting money through duplicative programs, you're probably getting fired. We can reduce spending by eliminating all waste, fraud, and abuse. And this is big when it comes to entitlement programs. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, there is so much waste, fraud, and abuse in those programs that can be eliminated. They don't focus on that. We can reduce spending, and this is one I haven't heard, through reducing payroll costs. How do you do that? Furloughs. Everybody in the federal government gets a furlough, including those in Congress. Actually, I have a plan for them as well. My first bill, and I'll tell you guys, I posted it to my Facebook and on my website. 10% pay cut for every member of Congress, both in the House and the Senate. And just so that, it'll keep them motivated, the pay cut won't be permanent. They'll get that 10% back when they've balanced the budget for 3 years straight and they've paid down our debt. Then they can get their 10% back. We can reduce our spending by eliminating all foreign aid. Now, I know that may not be popular with some folks, but it makes no sense to borrow from one and give to another, especially when you're in debt up to your eyeballs. How many of you think it would make sense if I asked every single one of you to go down to your bank, take out a $2,500 loan, and come give it to me for my campaign? How many of you would jump in line to do that? Well, I appreciate that, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and I wouldn't let you do that. I would not ask you to go into debt to do that. But that's what our federal government does. We borrow to give away. We have to reduce the national debt to restore the nation's creditworthiness and the strength of the American dollar. We have to reduce reliance on foreign oil to restore our energy independence and our national security. We have plenty of coal, we have plenty of oil, and we have plenty of natural gas. We just got to tap into it. We need to reduce and repeal stifling regulation. I think the point was made very clearly earlier how much regulation we have in this nation. We have to reduce, not just reduce, but repeal, get rid of. You hear the term regulation reform. Reform isn't what we need. We need reduction. Start getting rid of some stuff. Instead of Congress passing laws, how about they take a year or two moratorium from passing any new laws, start looking at what's on the books, and get rid of a bunch of stuff that we just don't need anymore. Because this regulation and this legislation, it's choking the life out of our business. It's killing our economy. And if we want to restore an environment for growth, and we want to restore to business owners the right to run their business the way they want to, then we got to do this. You should not be told how to run your own business. It's your business. You worked hard for what you have. We need to repeal all unconstitutional legislation. Obamacare needs to be gone immediately. To restore a constitutionally limited government, To restore individual rights, you should not be mandated or told you have to buy anything. And to restore states' rights, Congress must be confined to its constitutionally limited powers as outlined in Article 1, Section 8. And we must restore a government of the people, by the people, for the people. How do we do this? We the people get motivated. We the people get active. And we elect citizen legislators who will represent the people and rein in this runaway government. In short, we change Washington. Now, the issues we're facing as a nation, these aren't new issues. We've been here before. The problem is, this time, they're much more serious than they were in times past. Effecting the necessary changes in Washington is not going to be easy. But if we the people stick together, if we work together, we can make that difference. It's not going to happen overnight, but if we persevere, if we stay determined, if we stay patient, if we focus on the goal and the task at hand, then we will succeed. I believe in the American spirit, and I believe in the resolve of the American people to do the right thing, to do what is necessary to preserve our American heritage. If you're sick and tired of politics as usual, as I am, then I ask you, please, consider joining our team. Visit Jim and Lori outside. Volunteer to help out on our campaign. Make a donation. Do both. But we need your help. We're here to make a difference and to work for you. And together, we can reduce, we can repeal, and we can restore this nation to the great nation it once was. Amen.